Well, hey everyone, this is Rob from Intended Consequences. Today, we are out doing a lovely country test ride of this 2018 Electra Ultra Classic. It's my dad's bike. It's beautiful, it's heavy, it's awesome. It's for touring, and we're going to get into it right after this intro. So roll it. Alright y'all, so welcome back from the intro. At this point we've been on this bike for about 90 minutes, and so I feel like we, look at that view. That's a beautiful day. I feel like we have got kind of a feel for it, some of its strengths and some of its weaknesses, and that's basically what I'd like to provide for you right now, is just my kind of thoughts and opinions riding around on this thing. Now, again, this is the 2018, so the specs from Harley-Davidson's website, which links are in the description below, might be a little bit different than this bike specifically, but you can pretty much bet on them being kind of close. And the big thing is that this is a big bike. This thing's coming in at over 900 pounds, and that's without even stuff in the packs. And so Doc Brown, he packed light for me, so there's not a whole lot of weight, but you could easily imagine that going on longer trips or something of that nature, you'll pack these things out. And when you do that, now you have a 1,000-pound bike. And there's certain characteristics of a 900,000-pound bike that you're not going to find in any other type of class of motorcycle, because this is kind of a breed into itself. You know, there's heavy bikes, and then there's heavy bikes. And this is definitely a heavy bike. Not necessarily a bad thing. It is designed for this sort of thing. So, you know, obviously there are things it can do well and things it does not do well, and we're going to talk about those things here in a second. Alright, so the first thing I noticed getting on this bike is the very pleasing cockpit arrangement. So if you saw my video about the Road Glide, you know that I was pretty critical about kind of the placement of things and how the whole thing was set up. And as you can see on this bike, it's fairly pleasing. You got good controls here. You've got the touchscreen, which is easily reached. You got the display controls up here at the top. You know, the wrists, very, very easy to see and very easy to maneuver. So that's really nice. It's a very nice, clean setup for what we want to do here on this bike. I don't have to look around for things. I know where everything's at almost at a glance. And again, I haven't been on this bike but for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. So kind of in line under the same vein, again, comparing the Road Glide to this bike, and I think that's very fair because these are both Harley-Davidson flagship touring motorcycles, is my visibility. You know, the Road Glide had that big bearing. It was huge. It blocked my view. I couldn't see the road immediately in front of me. I had to look over it, and I'm a tall guy, so I had a pretty good vantage point versus maybe somebody who was a little bit shorter. Now they're almost looking over like they're looking over the hood of their car. And some people, I guess, like that. I'm not a big fan of it. I like to see it. On this bike, you can probably tell a little bit through the GoPro, but definitely sitting here, you know, with the Batwing fairing much closer to me, and then this bigger clear windshield, I can see a lot of the road in front of me, almost to the point where I have no real complaints about this setup at all. I can see absolutely everything, top, bottom, left, right. And yeah, there's this one spot right in the middle where I can't, but you know what? I can live with that. I have a much superior visibility on this motorcycle versus on the Road Glide. Now, after spending a couple hours in the saddle on this thing, something that definitely stands out is just the overall comfort of this motorcycle. It has just absolutely flawless ergonomic design to where I'm just exceptionally comfortable on this thing. It has a backrest. Now that's an accessory. That's less about the motorcycle. That's an accessory you can get. But a backrest absolutely makes a difference for these long haul trips. Just being able to kind of lean back a little bit and get that support right in the small of your back is, you know, it cannot be overstated. When you don't have a backrest, your spine kind of curves and it's just a little bit unnatural of a curve depending on what type of motorcycle you're on. And over time, with the impacts from the road and bang, 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 you know, you don't have the greatest suspension in the world, and it really can start to wear, especially if you've had some back problems in the past, which some of you might have, some of you might have not. But the point is that this backrest makes all the difference. And again, it's an accessory. Almost any motorcycle can get a backrest, so I'm not going to label it to this one specifically, but let me tell you, the comfort level on this motorcycle is great. The suspension on this motorcycle is fantastic. Not just handling the weight or the potential weight. Again, it's 900 pounds right off the factory floor, but you start adding a passenger back here, you start adding luggage, and it can get very heavy very fast. The suspension is absolutely designed to handle that. It is premium, top-tier suspension. It is very smooth. I've gone over railroad tracks, I've gone over potholes, I've gone over larger cracks in the road, and this motorcycle absolutely just goes through it almost the same way it feels like a car or truck would, just right through with minimum discomfort and it being jarring. So absolutely comfort. The fairing, the design and the shape of this motorcycle funneling wind, the air pocket in here is really, really nice. There's not a lot of wind at all, and it's absolutely wonderful. I'm exceptionally comfortable. I have no aches, no pains, and I am really enjoying this ride, as it were, because of the comfort. I can't give this motorcycle enough credit for, I mean, here it is, boom, we just hit a bridge, right? Nothing at all. Oh, there's a little bit of hot hole, boom, right over it. I'm one-handing it, didn't even phase the motorcycle. So just absolutely smooth. And just to elaborate a little bit more about that wind pocket thing, and this isn't a perfect analogy, but it might help if you're not familiar with motorcycles or you've only ridden a particular type of motorcycle. So imagine a faucet, like in your sink, your kitchen sink, right? And you take a pool ball and you run water over it. And because of the smooth contours of the pool ball, you know, it's just going to just glide around it, like no resistance. It's just going to be very smooth, not a problem. And that's kind of what this motorcycle has, is it's rounded out just enough to just really allow that air to flow around the sides, over the top, and underneath, to create just a nice pocket right in front of me, and it kind of envelops my body, and the air, much like the water would on a pool ball, just goes right around. The difference is without the sort of fairing and kind of the blades that direct the air off this motorcycle, is like Redzilla, right? A Sportster. No fairing, no nothing. That's like taking like a block of wood, like a wood block, like a child might have, a square, and holding that underwater. And you know, the water's just hitting it and spraying everywhere, and it's a pretty chaotic mess. That's kind of what it's like riding a Sportster versus something like this, where the air is just kind of flowing nice and smooth versus just bam, hitting you, just buffeting your body, and that way your chest kind of becomes more like a sail or a parachute, and that can be rather uncomfortable, especially over long hauls. It's kind of fun zipping around the city or on hot days or something, but if you're really going to put in the distance, then you absolutely want something to kind of absorb that water, absorb that air, and just kind of direct it around your body. So in that way, it's also a smoother ride because the air is going around you versus into you. And that's kind of what I mean about that. And lastly, you got that cargo capacity, right? Like, this thing can hold a lot of stuff. You can strap down stuff to the outside. It holds a lot in the pockets. That's good if you want like a safety gear, water, a med kit, a small tool kit, rain gear. If you get caught out in the rain on a long trip, you can throw that on and keep yourself relatively dry. You know, an extra little helmet if you want to take on a passenger, like, and that's just stuff off the top of my head. You can fit luggage, you can fit just all sorts of things that no other motorcycle can handle or handle very well. So that's definitely something you want to look for if you're in the market for a touring motorcycle, is okay, how much can this stuff carry? And yeah, there's all kinds of ways to strap things down to the outside of a bike and that absolutely works. I do it a lot on my Sportster. But when you're looking at a touring bike, there's just something nice about being able to lock your stuff into a container and it's not going to get wet or bothered by the elements. So cool, y'all. That's awesome. Supposed to be some sort of turnoff here. Alright, so let's get into some of the things that I'm not so crazy about. And let's go for starters with the handling. Because you've got a fixed to the handlebars fairing up here, it makes counter steering, especially when you're moving. I mean, that looks easy when you're just wiggling like that, but when you're in a turn, especially a sharper turn, the wind is actually pressing against you, so it takes a little bit more juice to counter steer. Not a whole lot more, but definitely noticeable, to the point where, you know, coming out of a highway ramp or excuse me, interstate ramp, and you're coming in at speed, you know, I found that there were times that I've had to I was going wide. I wasn't putting enough counter steering in, and I had to just give it a little bit more so I didn't go out of my lane. And that's, if you're not expecting that, that can be a little bit jarring. Another thing is, obviously, the downside to all this great comfort and all this great storage space is the weight. I mean, this thing is a bear. And now here, you know, I'm at speed, you know, I'm going, it's no problem. Perfect balance. Look, no hands, perfect balance. But in a parking lot or a low speed scenario, like, I just cannot imagine the challenges with this motorcycle. This is not a motorcycle that you can muscle and make it do what you want to do with strength. This is a finesse motorcycle. You have to know how to ride. You have to practice riding at slow speeds to maneuver this thing in a parking lot, in and out of parking garages, things like that, where it's tight. You're not going to be able to just wing it or, you know, get it. Another thing, if this bike goes down on its side, you never obviously want that to happen. If this bike were to go down, getting it back up would be a bear. I don't think there's a whole lot of many people without help could get this bike back upright if it was down on its side. Now, to its credit, it's got certain things on it so it doesn't go pretty much all the way over its side. Although it can, it usually will get caught at like an angle like this or like this, and so you don't have to get it all the way up. It can go on its side, but if it's just a low speed tip, it's probably not going to go all the way. You don't want that to happen. You gotta practice, especially when you're talking about a bike that is either very, very powerful, like some bikes are, or very, very heavy, like this one in particular. So there's nothing you can really do about that as a rider. You know, if you're on this bike and you gotta practice, you gotta learn. It's not necessarily the bike's fault. It's heavy for a reason. Another thing I don't like, and we were talking about the air bubble a few minutes ago, is on this bike in particular, because I am tall, and this is less about the bike and more about just me. Again, I am 6'3". I am a tall rider. The wind's coming off this windshield, and it's coming up, and it is just plowing me right in the top of my helmet. So not just the air that would naturally be hitting the top of my helmet, but because of the shape and the way the air flows over this motorcycle, basically all of the air that is hitting this bat wing coming over the top is being directed straight into my helmet. And I feel it. It's from about the eyes up. It's just getting buffeted. And hopefully the GoPro's not shaking like crazy, but I know that my head is at certain speeds. Not crazy about that. If this were mine, I would look at getting maybe a slightly taller windshield, and they have those. So not necessarily a flaw of the bike, but just something I'm experiencing right now in this ride that I just do not necessarily care for right out of the gate. Look look at this. We got some train tracks here. Let's just go over this. This car's gonna screw it up. I was just gonna blast these train tracks, but this car's gonna go real slow. Yeah, and the last thing I'm not really crazy about this bike, and I kind of alluded to this a minute ago, is if you are not accustomed to bikes of this weight and size, and I am not. This is the biggest, heaviest bike I've ever ridden, and it is. You got to practice. Let me just put it that way. You absolutely have to practice, because the mechanics are different, the balance is different, the power and the use of torque is different, and you need to get used to those things. It's intimidating getting on it for the first time and just riding it around town a little bit. You know, you kind of figure it out. But if I were to have this bike full time, I would definitely need to practice on it. And that's just say, is there some bikes you can just jump on and go? Kind of doesn't really matter what type of bike, if they're generally the same style, class, weight, whatever, power. This is not one you just want to jump on and go. You can. Certainly an experienced rider could get on this bike having never ridden on it before and go, here I am, I'm doing it myself. But there's a learning curve, and you need to know what you're doing before you get on it. So that's, again, not necessarily a knock on the bike or its design or its engineering. It's just to say that if you're looking for a bike, maybe this isn't the first one you want to jump on. So who's this bike for? What is this giant, heavy, super comfortable bike for? Well, it is definitely for the person who is very serious about logging those long interstate miles. It is for the type of person that has to take a road trip, and their first thought isn't to loading up their vehicle, but loading up their bike. This thing, MSRP, is around 30 grand, and that is a stinking car. If you're gonna buy a motorcycle that costs the same amount as a car, you absolutely need to be using it. You know, this is Harley's top of the line motorcycle before you get into like CVO territory. So it is a premium motorcycle, and it is absolutely just a monster on long trips. I could jump on this bike and I could foresee myself riding anywhere in the country comfortably and easily with everything I want to have with me in the back, in the saddlebags, just having a good old time. That's who this bike is for. You got to be serious about it though. Buying this bike and keeping it parked in your garage is not going to be very beneficial with that price tag. Likewise, if you're just looking for something in and around town just to get from here to there on, I'm not going to recommend this bike either. It is heavy, it is unwieldy. I would get exhausted going from stoplight to stoplight to stoplight all day on a bike of this weight. Not necessarily what I would consider a good time. So, you know, definitely not a beginner bike. If you're a beginner rider, don't even waste your time here. It's not in a good price range for you because you're going to mess it up. It is absolutely not something that you want to get into on your first ride. But if you're an intermediate or experienced rider and you are just, you know, you're thinking about going to Sturgis or driving across the country or going down to the beach, touring Florida, you know, anything where you're going to log some serious interstate miles, like this is the bike. This is absolutely the bike for you. The owner of this bike has dropped like 30,000 miles in like 2-3 years, and that is fantastic. You know, he would routinely take this bike between Birmingham, Alabama and Baton Rouge, Louisiana regularly. That is the type of bike this is, and I can foresee him just clicking in the cruise control, sitting back and just enjoying the whole thing comfortably. And when he gets to his destination, or her destination, whoever, he's totally comfortable jumping off the bike, doing what they got to do without stretching their backs out and doing all that stuff. So yeah, if you're looking to get into touring and you are dedicated, like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm driving I-10, I'm going up and down the Pacific coast, whatever big honking rides you got going on where you live, what you want to do, this is the bike to do it on. Not the greatest in the twisties, not the greatest in town, definitely not the greatest for a beginner rider, but if you are that person who logs those big highway miles, big interstate miles, this is your bike. I am just absolutely completely impressed with the way it does what it needs to do. So, that's it. Those are my thoughts about this 2018 Harley-Davidson Electra Glide Ultra Classic. Man, these are some long names, right? It is my father-in-law's bike. Thank you again, Lloyd, for letting me take your bike out. Thank you for letting me review it for the channel. And listen, folks, if you like this sort of thing, I'm going to try to get on as many bikes as I can. We got big news coming up, but either way, if you like this sort of thing, be sure to like and subscribe. Keep the rubber side down, and I will see y'all next time.